Two rivals, as they converge in the middle of the wrestling mat, the reenactment of a legendary saga begins. Mitra and the Sun stand facing each other to prove their superiority, although the end of the ceremony marks the time for renewing the brotherhood pact and companionship to have a luminous world. We reviewed the myth of Mitra's birth in a previous video. He steps foot on the ground from the midst of a rock, with a machete and a torch, defining his first challenge as standing in battle against the sun on the night of his birth to showcase his power. We've discussed how Mithraism is one of the oldest religions in the world, and consequently we can see its impact on religions that have appeared throughout human history. Some of these religions even copied their rituals and religious myths from Mithraism. One of the most significant instances of such borrowing, which has been the subject of numerous writings, is the myth of Jacob wrestling with Elohim in Hebrew religious texts. Jacob, whose journey is marked by turbulent highs and lows, encountered a pivotal moment as he traveled with his wives and children from Haran to Canaan. Along the way, he found himself by a riverbank, where a mysterious encounter unfolded. Wrestling through the night with an enigmatic figure, Jacob's struggle persisted until dawn. Ultimately, unable to overpower him, the figure asks to end the wrestling, and Jacob responds that the man must bless him in return for letting him go. In this narrative, the figure confronting Jacob is, in some interpretations, Elohim or God, and in others, an angel named Samael. Their wrestling match begins similarly to the narrative of Mitra's birthnight. Elements such as water, the sun, and dawn are common between the two narratives, but they have a crucial difference. In Jacob's narrative, the defeated party, meaning God or Elohim, bestows a blessing upon Jacob, but in Mithra's narrative, the victorious party of the wrestling match, meaning Mitra, bestows the radiance of the sun and heavenly sovereignty upon the sun. But certainly, the Mitraic cult held enough sway over human society at one juncture that leaders of monotheistic religions sought to align their faiths more closely with prevalent beliefs by adopting elements of Mythric mythologies. However, as we've discussed before, the ancient Persians, or at least the spiritual leaders of ancient Persian religion, consistently employed strategies to change externally imposed religions and beliefs into their own cultural framework. This was done to safeguard the fundamental tenets of their ancient beliefs for future generations. And it seems that Mitra's battle with the sun on his birthnight extended far beyond mere mythological narratives. Not only did it permeate the stories and beliefs of other religions, attributing qualities of mercy to other gods and deities, but it also influenced the reinterpretation of ancient rituals into contemporary practices. The temples of the Mitrists were often built in caves or similar underground locations. The general interpretation is that the goal was to reconstruct the celestial dome and the earthly expanse in a limited space. Alongside these caves or underground temples, there was often a flowing river, and their interior space was very limited, with walls adorned with mythological figures and patterns. In most of these temples, rows resembling benches were built around a courtyard, and religious leaders would conduct their ceremonies in the middle of this courtyard, while spectators could sit on the benches around the courtyard to watch. In the sources we've examined so far, there's no mention of the rituals and ceremonies performed in these spaces, so if you have any information about this, please share it in the comments. However, one of the focal points of discussion lies in the correlation between an ancient Persian sport and its dedicated venues, called Zourkhaneh, which bore a striking resemblance to Mithraic temples. These venues were characterized by small enclosed areas constructed underground, accessible via lengthy staircases. Surrounding these spaces, platforms and benches were erected to accommodate spectators during the ceremonies. Mirdad Bahar provides detailed explanations in this article about the similarities between the customs of Zourkhaneh and the worshippers of Mithra in their temples. Among them is that when one side falls to the ground in the Zourkhaneh, the same customs of Mitra and the Sun are observed. The two sides clasp each other's left arms and shake hands with their right hands. Just like Mitra and the Sun, who formed a friendship pact after their wrestling match in Zourkhaneh 2, the two sides should never become enemies, and even if animosity arises between them, they must reconcile and remain friends. Even in Zourkhaneh, we have a hierarchical structure similar to the 7 ranks of membership in the Mithraic cult. In Zourkhaneh, the timeless combat customs resonate with the archetype of Mitra's evolution into the god of war, particularly in response to covenant violations. As we discussed in our earlier video, soldiers from the Iranian army were among Mitra's esteemed followers. Before entering battle against nations that had reneged on their promises, these soldiers performed unique rituals seeking Mitra's blessings and support. Mehrdad Bahar's comprehension of the link between the Mithraic ritual and Persian wrestling tradition is profound. He proposes that contemporary Zourkhanehs serve as modern iterations of Mithraic temples, suggesting the likelihood of similar rituals being conducted in Mithraic temples in the West. However, the veracity of this claim remains uncertain due to the scarcity of reliable sources. Even in modern wrestling, echoes of the battle and friendship between Mitra and the Sun endure. Consider the golden round mat, where two wrestlers engage in their match, a potential representation of the Sun itself. The opposing sides can be seen as symbols of Mitra and the Sun engaged in their mythical wrestling match. So, the next time you observe a wrestling bout, recognize that you're witnessing a symbolic performance that harkens back to the profound connection between Mitra and the Sun.